Davies. She's the founder and CEO of the award-winning Creation Development Trust, which she set up in 2000 in the Garrow Valley. Creation is now the biggest active citizenship network in Europe.
Garrow, this is where we based, right at the top of a rural valley. We're in the most remote community in the Bridgend County, and this is what we looked like in the 60s. We had 2 pits in the village, we had 6 pits in the valley altogether, and of course, you know, we had the Miners Welfare Fund because we had visionary miners who contributed 3 pence a week from their wages towards a fund so they could transform their own communities. And they built the pithead baths in 1932, which transformed the lives of their wives and their mothers, who didn't have to continually run hot baths anymore and scrub off coal dust. We had a thriving economy. These were the shops in the main street. This is still the economic centre, but as you walk down the street you'll see every other shop is closed. We had a thriving culture. This is one of the brass bands. This was in 1951. And we used to have our big celebratory events as well, mainly funded by the pits. Of course, you know, this is a big turning point in our history when the mines closed in 1985, following a year's strike. And then this is what happened next. So the pithead wheels were toppled, concrete poured down, and this is how we were left for 4 years. But we had a wonderful reclamation scheme following that. I mean, our councillors fought hard for the area to be cleaned up, and it took 10 years to actually remove all that slag from the area, and the clean-up cost 17 million, which was all paid for by the taxpayer. So it's totally transformed the environment and people are very, very happy with it. And we thought, well, it's been 15 years now since the closure of the mines, and we still haven't got any jobs, and we still got shops shut in, and we don't know what we can do, but we'll see what we can do. And so we set up in 2000, and we set up as an independent sustainable regeneration organisation. And what we do is we try to create community-owned assets, replicating what the miners did really when they built the halls and the libraries and the ambulance stations and those kinds of things. And so this is where we based, and this was our first project because we spoke to the local authority and they agreed that we could manage this building on their behalf. This is a former miners' hall and it's in Garrow. It was transformed in 1994 during something called Valleys Live, which was a celebration of the valleys, and money was poured into the valleys at that time. The renovation cost, the building of the hall was 3,400 in 1894, paid for by the miners of course, and then it cost 1.5 million to renovate in 1994. So I don't know if that's inflation, I'm not sure why. But it is a fantastic facility, so we're really lucky to get this, and we have a theatre, dance studio, training rooms, kitchen and offices there. So the mosaic on the front here is listed as one of the top 10 things you should see if you come to Wales, because it's actually the history of the valley. And then we set about talking to people and finding out what people wanted. So what we did was, on the jobs front, was try and create things for people to do during the day, because people were lonely, isolated, and we've got a lot of mental health problems as a result of that. So we set up Creation Cafe. This cafe was running before by a lovely woman called Diane, and her husband passed away. She decided to close it. So we bought the cafe then for £30,000, and we created this cafe here out of this building, and it's very popular, and sometimes you can't get in there, so that's a good sign. And another thing we did was we worked with some local people and set up a sculpture studio, and we had a sculptor come in 2 days a week teaching and training local people how to work with clay, and that eventually became community led and run, and they make new environmental features for the area. So one of the first things they did was they made a little sculpture for the sheltered accommodation garden, which was nice, and you start kind of building up relationships there. And then they gave that to the people in the sheltered accommodation, and then the people in the sheltered accommodation wanted to do something for the community, so they then ran a fete, and they'd never actually opened up the building before. And their main issue was that nobody ever came to visit them, and nobody used the community centre, which was part of the sheltered accommodation, which even we didn't know existed, even though we'd lived there all our lives. So that was really interesting. And then they decided, with the encouragement of the sculptor, to make some big sculptures. And this was made in the basement of a little tiny shop, and you could only go down there if you were really small, because you couldn't get around it otherwise. So we had small ladies doing this sculpture. And because what we found was that during the course of running these sculpture courses, that the famous Welsh hymn Calan Lan was actually written in Blaengarw. That's another thing we didn't know. So we've taken that theme now, and this is the Calan Lan sculpture, and the words of the hymn are written down the bottom of the sculpture, because we felt it really reflected what people were like in our community. And the words basically are, you don't need riches, you need a song and a good heart, and that's what you need basically to be happy. And then the group went on to make other sculptures. For many, many years we were being asked, can you recreate the carnival? So we had to build up our own capacity before we could actually do this. And we had a meeting in January of 2007, and we had lots of people turn up for that, offering to give their help and support. So we brought some designers in to make the costumes this first year. And the local parachute factory gave all this wonderful parachute material. These are all tied on by hand. We've got about 140 people now who sew in the community. But the first carnival, because we lacked the skills in the community, cost £67,000. And that's previously what the mine was putting in, and local people are putting in. So as the years went on, that got less and less and less, because the skills to put this together were building in the community, and we bought quite a lot of equipment. So it now costs about £5,000 to put the carnival on. And quite a bit of that is spent on local people to put up, to local builders to put up the stage, because you have to the health and safety, you have to things like that. So that all goes into the local economy. We had 3,000 people turn up on the day, and we always have the Welsh pipers leading the parade. So as they come up the valley, you know they're on their way. It's a fantastic feeling. It's really, really exciting. The other thing that happened during the reclamation scheme is the mountains were closed off for 10 years. So we got this whole generation who didn't go on to the mountainsides at all. And it kind of, we lost that connection. We used to play on the mountainsides because we couldn't play in the valley floor, because there was no valley floor really, not much of one anyway. So they were our playgrounds, and that had stopped. So we've done things like planted an orchard with the local school children. They paraded up there to plant the orchard. With the lovely lakes that we've got now, part of the reclamation scheme, we've made these coracles. And that was a lovely day, it was a nice afternoon. And we were making coracles, and the people were coming out with Welsh cakes and tea and feeding them to local people, so that was nice. And you know, that's just trying to get people reconnected. We've lots of people learning how to grow food, hanging basket workshops, things like that. So, and that's resulted in us creating some growing spaces locally, which local people look after. We were aware from opening the cafe that if we wanted to get decent food, then we had to go to either Cardiff or Carmarthen, and we're surrounded by farms, and we thought that was a bit crazy. So we decided to do the food box scheme. Now, when we were growing up, we had our local butchers, our bakers, and our greengrocers, and you'd phone them up, and then you'd get a box of food delivered, and it was brilliant. And then that stopped, and now we're doing it again. So we're trying to get local growers and suppliers, and we've got the real food shop, which is just been finished, and now we're looking at a farm. And we help lots of local groups because we're a social enterprise and we can get funding and we can show them how to set up their groups. Now, this group was going well before we set up as an organisation, but they'd struggled with finding their way through lots. You can imagine setting up a heritage railway group, you know, the issues you can have it with that. So we've worked with them and they're now starting to lay track. So that is kind of the last job. They lay in track themselves and they've set up a training school. So they've had one course, one 12-week project, and took on long-term unemployed young people, and 9 out of the 12 are now working with Network Rail. So there's definitely something in that we can do that. So those young people are involved in laying track as well, because a lot of the people involved in this group are quite elderly and they want to bring young people into the business. This engine is called Pamela, and she was in the valley the next valley over. She would have been a working steam engine pulling coal in the Llinby Valley. So that, to be honest, that's just a snapshot of what we do. There's lots more that we do, and this is all facilitated through something called a time centre, which is a type of time bank. 1 hour of help given to the community for anybody that works there generates one-time credit, which is our community currency. So that's what our community currency looks like. There's lots of community currency now all over Wales and parts of England, and we've set a time bank up in Japan and Croatia, and we're going to be working with Greg in the future in America. Doesn't know that yet. And you know, this is Nesta's explanation of co-production, and I suppose that's what we've been doing. So it's nice to have a name for it now. And I get a big kick out of standing in our cafe and hearing people talking about time credits behind me. So it's a real community currency that people own. And it can, and of course it will lead to savings in public budgets because people are addressing their own problems. So time banking is based on these values that people are assets. You know, when we started in regeneration, we used to get out, well we still do now, our Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation and go, oh, Blangarrow's 65th worst in terms of health, brilliant, we can get some money. So, but now we don't look at those very much anymore, and we say, right, people are assets, these are their issues, how can we address them with the people themselves? It's about redefining work, so every type of work is valued. Caring for each other, looking after each other, helping each other, that's valued as well. So this is how we use time banking really to reconstruct healthy communities. We bring people together in a spirit of equality, which is what you said. Value and record the contributions to community life, so we count how many hours people do because we've got a distribution system for time credits. We build an individual's confidence and skills. Well, we don't actually build it, that happens. That's the transformation that takes place when they get involved. And like you said, have a say in the community and what they can do about it. It also helps to build organisational capacity. So when you've got lots and lots of groups operating in the community and they start using time credits, then ultimately they get more people joining their group and helps them to achieve more of their aims and objectives. It builds community networks and knowledge. That's what happens, you know, when you've got time credits, people want to join. It helps with the family budget. It gets things done that wouldn't otherwise get done, because now we've got two currencies. Now we've got the sterling currency, which we haven't got enough of, and then we've got the community currency. It encourages community participation and grows community spirit, and it creates a stronger sense of community ownership and responsibility. So we find talents in the community now we didn't know were there. We found a hat maker we didn't know existed, and accountants, and all these wonderful talents. And this is how you gain time credits, so you can do anything in the community that you want, but it's got to be something that you're passionate about, because if it's not, then you're not going to stay and continue to do that activity. You can also be an active learner, so we've made the distinction between passive and active learning. So if you're a passive learner and you just want to come along and enjoy flower arranging or something, then you can use time credits now to pay for those courses. So, you know, not having enough money in the family is no longer a barrier. But if you're an active learner, if you say, I'm going to do that first aid course and then I'm going to be a steward at the carnival, then we will give you time credits for developing that skill and taking it back into the community. And you can do all these other things. You can do anything, actually. We set up a time bank in one of the youth centres because it was in the community where there were high levels of antisocial behaviour, and the antisocial behaviour went down to 0 in 5 months. So that's been recorded, the research is there. So it shows that if you empower young people, they're not going to go out there and get involved in antisocial behaviour. So this is what you can spend your time credits on in Blaengarrow. You can attend an event, go on a trip. You can use them to pay for childcare in the after school club, go on a course, room hire, photocopying. You can have a reduced price meal in our cafe, or you can hold your own event, because we accept time credits for room hire and for attendance out theatre. So we got whole groups now that just run on time credits. We have now got almost 2,000 members. It's not quite 2,000. We have at least 30,000 hours of active citizenship every year, and we can't any longer, you know, make an accurate assessment of how many hours goes on, because what started happening now is we've got this person-to-person exchange going on as well, where people are, you know, are kind of exchanging time credits between each other as well. We've got 50 group members, 27 of those groups are new groups in the area that have formed since the time bank started. We've got a community governance structure because we've got a street ambassador scheme, and we've recently taken over the neighbourhood watch network for the whole of Bridgend as well. So we're just working with them, and they've just reformed their own group, working with them, and so, you know, they perhaps can get involved in transforming their own communities. And this is kind of our regeneration process, which is what you said really, you know, we get people engaged, build confidence, self-esteem, self-awareness, and then they get involved in running their own groups. And then they get involved in economic activity, and they decide they're going to go back to work or set up a social enterprise. We've had people set up their own small business, and then we've got other than social enterprises who have gone on to make some physical transformations, where we've got the park and the railway and sculptures and orchard planting and all sorts of things like that. So this is what we're involved in next, and actually there's another project in another valley that we'll probably get involved in, because the local authority, the community centre is in quite a bad state, so it now has to be pulled down. So I'm going tonight to a public meeting about that. So the community are ready now to take up arms and fight the local authority. So it's going to be a bloodbath tonight. No, it won't be. It'll be fine. But we've already worked with them and done a business plan, and we're helping them through that. But we're not going to do that work. They're going to do that work, and it's going to be local governance. So that's very, very important. And that's me. If anybody wants to talk to me ever again.